Nandi was 26 when she finally left the village. Her father had passed away when she was still a child, leaving her mother to raise three children alone. Life was not easy. Her mother spent long days working in the fields, trying to put food on the table. Nandi helped as much as she could, but deep inside, she dreamed of a different life, a bigger life. One day, an aunt from the city came to visit. Seeing how hard things were, she offered Nandi a chance, a retail job in the city. To Nandi, it felt like the door to a whole new world had opened. When she arrived in the city, she was determined to build a life she believed she deserved. She found a small apartment and a roommate named Rutendo, a calm, friendly woman in her mid 20s. Rutendo welcomed her warmly, excited to get to know the new girl she would be living with. One evening, as they unpacked boxes, Rutendo asked a simple question: "What brought you to the city?" Nandi hesitated. The truth sat right there on the tip of her tongue, but instead, she chose something else. She said her parents wanted her to learn independence, and just like that, the lies began. She walked around their tiny apartment, calling it humble, as if she hadn't grown up sharing a small hut with her mother and siblings back in the village. At work, Nandi was just a cashier, but when she was alone in the store, she would pretend to be the manager. On her way home, she would change into more formal clothes so she could look the part. Rotendo often asked about her job, curious about her life, and every time Nandi's stories grew bigger. She claimed she was the manager of the store. She said her family owned houses across the city, cars, connections, powerful political friends. But Rotendo began to notice something strange. The stories kept changing. The details never quite matched. And one question kept echoing in her mind. If Nandi's family was so wealthy, why was she sharing a tiny apartment? Nandi's lies were starting to fall apart. Soon, she felt trapped inside the life she had invented. Her job frustrated her. The pay was too small to send money home, and too little to maintain the rich girl story she had created. One evening while closing the store, she stared at the cash register. An idea crept into her mind. Just a little, she thought. No one will notice. But that Nandi stood there, staring at the cash register. Her heart was beating fast. She knew it was wrong, but she had already made up her mind. Slowly, she slipped a few notes into her pocket. Her hands were shaking, but she whispered to herself, "No one will notice. Just this once." That night, she changed into her formal clothes like she always did. The confident walk. She had to keep up the lie. "No one must ever know where I come from," she said quietly to herself. And so Nandi walked home, looking like a woman who had just clocked out of her corner office. But something began to change. At first, it was small things: a new handbag here, a nice pair of shoes there. Then the spending became bigger: shopping sprees, fancy restaurants, expensive outfits. Slowly, Nandi transformed into the very person she had pretended to be. Even Rutendo began to believe her. "One thing is for sure," Rutendo once said: "Nandi must come from a rich family." But behind the glamorous life, the stealing continued. At work, Nandi smiled politely at customers, but every now and then, a few notes would quietly disappear into her pocket. Outside the store, she looked like a confident city girl. Soon, she even started making friends with the city's baddies, stylish girls who loved expensive places and luxury lifestyles. With them came more pressure, more expectations, and for Nandi, more reasons to steal. But there is one thing about the truth: it always finds a way to reveal itself. One evening, feeling comfortable and untouchable, Nandi took a much larger amount from the register. Too comfortable, too careless. Later that night, the store manager was doing the bookkeeping. The numbers didn't make sense. Money was missing. Suspicious, he checked the hidden cameras, and there she was, Nandi, over and over again, taking money from the register and slipping it into her pocket. The manager didn't hesitate. He called her immediately. And then he called the police. At that very moment, Nandi felt something was wrong. Fear rushed through her body. She ran home, breathing heavily, throwing clothes into a small bag, grabbing anything she could find. Rotendo watched in shock. "Nandi, what's going on?" she asked. But Nandi couldn't answer. She kept whispering the same words over and over again. "What have I done? What have I done?" And before Rotendo could stop her, Nandi ran out of the apartment. Just minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Police officers were standing outside, and Rotendo stood there, confused as they began asking questions about Nandi. But what they revealed next, Lo, would shock her even more. First, Nandi had managed to escape the police, but she could not escape the guilt. As the bus left the city, she sat quietly by the window, holding her small bag tightly on her lap. Her heart was heavy. The lies had finally caught up with her. Halfway through the journey, the weight of it all became too much. Nandi burst into tears. She thought about her mother, the woman who had worked tirelessly in the fields to raise her. She thought about her younger siblings who looked up to her. How could I disappoint them like this? She whispered. The tears did not stop. She cried the entire journey back to the village. When the bus finally arrived, Nandi stepped down slowly. The walk back home felt like the longest walk of her life, a walk of shame. She had left the village dreaming of success, but now she was returning with nothing but a small bag and a broken heart. Her mother was working in the field when she saw a familiar figure walking toward the yard. At first, she squinted, trying to recognize the person. Then she realized it was Nandi, her face filled with worry. Months passed. Village life slowly wrapped itself around Nandi again, but things were not the same. The chemicals she had used in the city to make her skin look lighter began to burn under the harsh village sun. Her skin became irritated, painful. It was as if the life she had tried to fake was now leaving its marks on her. Every day, regret followed her. One afternoon, as Nandi sat quietly in the compound, her mother walked over and sat beside her. It was time for a difficult conversation. Her mother spoke softly but firmly. My daughter, I did not raise you to live like this. Nandi lowered her head, overwhelmed with shame. But strangely, hearing the truth from her mother also lifted a weight from her heart. For a while, Nandi stayed. She helped her mother in the fields. She spent time with her siblings. But deep inside, she knew she still wanted to try again. Eventually, she made a decision to return to the city. Before she left, her mother looked at her seriously and said, Nandi, my daughter, remember this. Nothing in life comes for free. Then she added quietly, and the truth will always come out. When Nandi returned to the city, she was nervous, but to her surprise, Rutendo welcomed her back warmly. The two sat down and talked for a long time. Rutendo looked at her and said something Nandi would never forget. Nandi, you didn't have to do all of that. You are still important, no matter where you come from. Those words stayed with her. This time, Nandi chose a different path. She found a new job, made new friends, and slowly began rebuilding her life. But this time, she did it honestly.